that was the time that I had ran for Miss America. The first time out, I was still a student, and I was like second runner-up to Miss Kansas. We had done a lot of Miss Louisiana preliminaries, and I couldn't win. I would be like first runner-up, second runner-up, third, but I never win. Always win Miss Congeniality.
Right.
I got so many of those little silver platters, but I would never win. And there were some Louisiana people with the Miss Louisiana pageant, 2 people, and they pulled us aside, and they told myself, they told Tiffany Williams, Faith Hunter, and Ruby Higgins, who was our consultant. They said, look, what they said, are not going to let y'all win because y'all are scaring the crap out of them. And they said they especially not going to let Pam win because not only is she Black and going to Grambling, she's not even from Louisiana. They said she should go to her home state and compete. And that's what I did. And
so
I just got back.
Wow. Okay.
So I went, and that's how I ended up running for Miss Kansas. And the first time I ran for Miss Kansas, I was second runner-up. And then I went to work for a year in Amarillo. They asked me to come back, and I came back and I won.
But I want to go back to that moment, Pam.
Oh, when I took the wig off.
I want to. What led to you making the decision to do what you did when you did it? Welcome to another edition of the 1901 podcast with Ken Rashad. This is the first episode of the new year. And I know we've been away for a while, but we are back. And we're going to have some fun with this episode that we are going to highlight, and a very special guest that I am very excited to bring on board. And so, without further ado, let me just go ahead and bring her on here, because she got game. She got game. This is my special guest. Now, for many of you out in the Grambling sphere, she's no stranger. She's my friend. She's your friend. She's actually my sister. And I clown her in ways that, to be quite honest with you, many of you can't. Right. And I take offense to it because that's just how close we are. We go back that far. All right. She is well over a career in journalism that spans at least 3 decades. She has transitioned in many ways to even go into the world of becoming a public servant.
Yes.
She is a member of the Federation of Democratic Women. She is a member of the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists. And last but not least, she is one of those devastating ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated via, I believe, Delta Iota chapter. My friend Pam McKelvy.
What's up, Ken with 2 N's?
Pam, you know what? This has been a long time coming. You guys have no idea. This took some time to coordinate because Pam is that busy.
Working for the people.
And so she finally was able to carve out some time to talk with me. And hopefully, if things go as expected or as planned, we might be seeing more of her in the very near future.
Yes.
So, Pam, for those of us who may not be aware of who you are and what you do, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Pam McKelvy, and I went to GSU. I'm happy to do this for HBCUs. What's up, Ken with 2 N's? Yes, we go way back to 1986 at Grambling State University when we had, Ken, remember we had those little cards to do registration? We didn't even have a computer printout. They had taken cardboard with magic markers and written numbers on them. It took me 3 days to get into the T.H. Harris Auditorium to register for my first semester at Grambling State University, but it changed my life, Ken. Changed my life, and I'm forever grateful to GSU.
And do know, those of us back in the day realize the importance of that time of the fee sheet.
Yes. Man,
I know the importance of the fee sheet, but boy, if you did not have your fee sheet.
Wait. Remember, I had to tell my son back in the day, because he was complaining about going online, Ken, and registering. Ken, it took him like 15 minutes. You hear me?
Mm-mm.
And he's talking about it shouldn't take that long. And I just had to look at him and break it down to him and explain to him how that we had 6 computers for all. At that time, I think our enrollment was something like just under 6,000 students for the campus. And there were 6 computers on the stage at the T.H. Harris Auditorium.
6 computers.
It was in school. I was like, this boy has no idea of how privileged he is. So I had to break it down to him, and then break it down to him how I had to have a college work study job to finish paying for that tuition, because I thought that I had a Pell Grant, but it was, as you look at it closely, it said conditional award.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a mistake. So that condition changed. So when I got there, I had no money. Praise God for Valerie Hudson, who was there. And she, of course, is a member of Delta Sigma Theta, which the sisterhood goes beyond college students.
Right.
And I started crying. I was like, I'm not going back to Kansas City. I must go to school. I was the first person in my family to, nuclear family, to be able to go to a 4-year institution and go to college. And I was like, I'm not going back to KCK. Okay. And when it was over, she got me a job in the foundation office. Mm-hmm. Remember those book scholarships everybody used to get? They were at that time, maybe like $400.
Yeah, I remember.
Assist with your books. So she got me a job in that office. And Helen Spear, who worked in that office, a dear, sweet lady, was my boss. And a lot of students, used to just come and sign up to get their paychecks. I was never notoriously late. I was on time every day. I did far and beyond what they asked me to do. And of course, that was the foundation office where they gave out the scholarships. And that's how I ended up doing the pageant.
Okay.
Win that scholarship.
So before we get to your experience as a student at Grambling,
yes,
let's go back just a tad bit further. You hail from Kansas City, if I'm right? Kansas City.
Kansas City, Kansas.
Talk about the steps that led you to Grambling. What made you decide to attend Grambling?
So I was in KCK. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. We moved to Kansas City when I was in the 9th grade. So I ended up going to high school in Kansas City. But when I was in Detroit, I was a student at Cass Tech, which a lot of Gramblingites went to Cass Tech because Cass at that time produced, and I still think Cass holds that record of producing more college graduates than any high school in Detroit, mm-hmm. in the metro area. And so I knew I had been going to a school that was predominantly African-American with Black excellence, because you had to test to get into Cass. There were 2 high elite schools, Cass and Renaissance. And I tried to get in both of them, and I got into Cass. And I always knew from being in Detroit that Black people were a progressive people. So when I went to Kansas City, Kansas, the environment was totally different. It was 70% white. And there was racism. We had 2 glass hallways in the morning where students would hang out and smoke. They don't let you smoke in high school anymore, but they would smoke in the glass hallway. And there was an upstairs one and a downstairs one. And as it was, the white people were upstairs and the Black people were downstairs. And to me, I just didn't, it was like going back in the 60s to me, because the Black students weren't very cohesive, because you had a lot of them that were trying to assimilate into the mainstream of white culture to be popular, to win the contest and what have you. And it was at that time that I was a student in high school in KCK in this different environment. And it was the first time that I ever thought that, Black people were systemically disenfranchised simply because they were Black. Even though I was in somewhere like Detroit, I had been around enough Black people to see our progress and our solidarity. So I knew then that I didn't want to go to college at PWI. And Eddie Robinson won the 324. I guess I must have been a junior or a senior because it got national press. And then I started looking into Grambling, and I sent in an application like in March. And I still have my letter and a scrapbook the registrar, I want to say I should have pulled that out, but I have that. And I said, if I can get into this HBCU, I'm going to go. And then the HBCU culture just was like coming home. It was like coming home. So when I say it changed the trajectory of my life, I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you a true thing in my life. And
so there is something to be said. So let me ask you this. Were you familiar with Grambling at all at that time?
I was not. I was not. So I went into when I was like in 11th grade.
So it was due to Eddie Robinson's 324th career victory.
Because one of my classmates,
Sports Illustrated cover,
had a T-shirt on. She had 324 on her T-shirt, and I was asking her about that. And then when she told me about it, I was like, "Wow!" And this person, I don't believe in coincidence. She has since become. She was her dad was Black and her mom was Hispanic. And I didn't know at that time, she was going through a lot of things too with the racism and, identity. And when she told me that I started looking it up and I was like, I was sold. It didn't take much. And then that connected with people from Cass, as Cass, a lot of the people from Cass that I would have been my classmates. Some of them ended up at Grambling, but a lot of them ended up going to HBCUs because that's where I got into the culture of, when we were in Cass in Detroit, everybody knew, you're going to go to college somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go to college somewhere. And at that time, I thought I might have been going to Wilberforce, which was in Ohio. Which is the oldest HBCU in the country. So I thought I was going to end up at Wilberforce when I was in high school. But when she talked about Grambling and then of course, when I looked it up and I saw the band and I was like, oh my God, look at this band. Cause our high school band, Lord, we marched 7 for 5. There was no deviation. It was no, to see this band. And I remember my first semester when the band would leave the stadium and play and march through the campus and you just come outside. And I was just like, it was just amazing to me. And I know everybody else that was used to the culture, took it for granted, but I was like, this is so awesome, to celebrate that because, I had been in a culture where our excellence was suppressed, because we had to assimilate to make the white students not feel threatened by us. And I know that now, but that's how it all worked out and led me to Grambling.
So not to cut you off. So there is something to be said. The reason why I asked you about the impactfulness of learning about Eddie Robinson's 324th victory, is because we hear all the time about, like, for instance, these football classics that are oftentimes played out, in various areas of the location of the country. It was just recently announced that Grambling and Jackson State are going to be playing in Las Vegas in October. Wow. And it's always been said that, when these HBCUs play in various parts of the country, that is supposedly a recruiting vehicle for each of the schools presented. So listening to what you said, there really is some truth to that being the case. Yeah. And that really was impactful in you making the decision to attend Grambling.
Yes, I'm getting chills right now because when I was in high school, think of me coming from a place like Detroit, which is all Black excellence, right? And then coming to this little community of KCK, which was mediocre, with these white students that would try out for things and they would win these things and we would know that we were better than them. But the system was not designed for us to show our excellence. It was always to make them feel superior. And even in graduation, there, the things that they did with the honors program, the teachers and all of that, they weren't wanting us to be our best because our best would have outshined them. So when you see something like J-State and Grambling State in a place like KCK, where the exposure to African-American excellence and dominance is not welcomed, I mean, it's like a whole new renewing to you. And it is a recruiting effort. And you got to realize that people in the South are comfortable with HBCUs because of the history and they have that familiarity. But people outside of the South, when you start getting into areas like the Midwest and St. Louis and Chicago and what have you, there is not that culture that is immersed and welcome. So it's reaffirming. And I guarantee you, when we are on broadcast and people see it, and it's not just the band, you know, a lot of excellence comes out of Grambling. Grambling has the nursing school now, which to my understanding is more competitive with white students than it is with Black students. And that goes to show you that once we are given a fair chance, we excel. And historically, that has always been the case. So Grambling is, and I make sure that I, even here when I was on the air, for the 20 some years I was on the air here, I always did public appearances. I always generated revenues for Grambling. I would, instead of requesting an honorarium, I would talk about, at that time, there were 117 HBCUs. That number has declined now. But I would talk about the 117 HBCUs and their impact, how they got started, why they were started, and how they made a difference. If you go back and start looking at all of your Black leaders, up until you get to Obama, all of those Black leaders came out of HBCUs. Even look at the vice president right now.
Yeah, right. So
all of those doctors went to Meharry College, okay, in Nashville. They weren't getting into Harvard Med, even though they were qualified. So HBCUs will always have a place in American culture. And I'm glad to see us getting our comeuppance. I'm glad to see the numbers going up. You know, Tennessee State, right here across the line. Tennessee State is starting to surpass the numbers of students coming out of high school going to Tennessee State, so much so that the legislature is trying to negate it by saying, well, why are they going to the HBCU? And they want to take their funding away.
So so I have to ask you this, Pam, because this has been one of these, every time I hear about someone who leaves Grambling, having never been there before, and they come from various parts of the country. And that's one of the things that makes Grambling so unique, because a rural university like Grambling, which is known internationally, and I'm not just saying that because I went there. It literally is known. And you've got people from all parts of the country as well as various parts of the world.
Right.
Talk about your first time. Was it because I hear this all the time. I actually remember people telling me that when they first got off that Greyhound and they got off, but a true story. Somebody told me that when they were coming, and I think they were coming in from Monroe, they flew in the airport or somewhere, they took a Greyhound coming from the east somewhere, and said they remember that when they arrived in Ruston and they were going to text campus, and the person says, "Oh, this ain't that bad. This is great," only to find out this ain't where you're supposed to go. You get off at the next stop, and he gets off. He get off at Grambling's campus, and he started crying.
Oh wow!
So I have to ask you, what were your initial thoughts when you first got there on campus?
So I went to Grambling sight unseen.
Well, yeah, so did he.
Sight unseen, right?
Right.
I had bought my plane ticket. I flew into Monroe, and it was in late flight, like almost midnight. The airport in Monroe was closed. They took us on the tarmac. It was a regional flight, and we got off the plane on the tarmac. I kid you not. They called somebody to open up the airport because they only had one wing open. And the dude came and he opened up the thing and he put our luggage, he shot our luggage through like a little chute. I kid you not. I had arranged for a bus ride from Grambling. I think I paid, I don't know, $25 or whatever it was to take me to campus. The bus ride was one of those like vans, those vans back in the day, the GMC van, the van I'm talking about. Maybe it fit comfortably.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
8 to 10 people.
Right. Yep.
So there were maybe 4 other students with me that also were coming to Grambling. And it seemed like they went somewhere and picked somebody up from like the bus station. And so the other people got on there. So by the time we actually were heading to Grambling, the little van was so packed and full of all of our luggage and us squeezing in there for this ride to Grambling. They took me to Jones Hall. It was a weekend day. There were no students on campus. And the RA took me to my room and slid my boxes outside of my door. And the first thing when I opened up my room, because my roommate was an upperclassman, she had already declared her little space, but she wasn't even on campus. She was hanging out off campus. She had just declared her space in the room. And there were like dead roaches outside the door.
What?
It just was so, it was so, and I kid you not, when we were on that tarmac, there was tumbleweed. You know what I'm talking about? Like blowing across the tarmac thing. And I was like, oh God, please don't let this be a sign, because I haven't seen this place. So it was dark when I first got in, right? So the next day I'm reading that, remember the bulletin they used to have with all your courses in it? And it said, don't forget to see beautiful downtown Grambling. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see downtown Grambling. I must have walked around Tasty's Chicken, and I can't remember the other place. I just remember Tasty's Chicken, where the man would put the seasoning salt on top of the chicken. That was fabulous because I was a sodium addict. And I kept walking around, and I was like, where is downtown Grambling? And the girl finally said, girl, that's the Village. And I was like, what? Where's City Hall? What? You know, Ken, initially it bugged me, but you got to remember, I had been in KCK. So being in the country was no big thing to me. Okay. And I grew up, you know, fishing and all that. So that really wasn't a big thing. I think it was just the isolation from nothing. There was no place to go eat. There was no place to go hang out. And I wasn't into playing cards because, you know, a lot of people had, like, I learned front to union. I was like, front to union, or make groceries. I was like, okay. But after about, I would say those first 6 to 8 weeks, they were different. And the heat was the biggest thing for me, because I have never felt heat like that. I would leave Jones Hall and walk to the auditorium. And, you know, back then I was like all professional, dressing up in my little cute stuff, doing my little hair and all that, because I'm going to be a professional. Ken, by the time I would get to T.H. Harris Auditorium, my hair would be an afro nappy, kinked up. I'd be sweating all down there, makeup running, just miserable. Okay. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm gonna have to just sport some t-shirts till I can get in school. But it is a lot of culture shock for you. And then the food situation. The good thing is that back in the day, I remember the calf. Remember her name? She used to be over the calf. She was a really tall lady, real mean, Miss Perry. You remember Miss Perry?
I may have. Oh my God, that was so long ago.
And then I have memories of Miss Perry letting the football players usurp the line.
You're not there. Okay. Yeah, I do remember that.
And remember that big dude Whirl?
Yes.
I remember Raymond Smith sitting on a chair one time in the calf, and the chicken and 4 legs just going splat.
Raymond Smith.
The cafeteria just erupted, but nobody said anything to his face.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, you know, and I remember that Southern used to call us country bumpkins, and you know, there would always be these parties off campus. But my first semester, I think I was really so in tune just to, you know, a lot happened to me, because that whole thing of almost not getting in school kind of made me think differently than a lot of the other students that were complaining about stuff, or who had access to cars and going and doing different things. So they weren't, you know, caught up by that. I just was so focused on, look, this is my bread and butter. I don't have anything to go back home and fall back on. So I need to make this work. And that's what I did. I mean, I did the pageant that first year. I did the essay thing. I ran for freshman class, something. I can't remember with Omar Sims. And I just started getting involved.
Remember Omar? Yeah.
Just started getting involved in stuff and realizing that I had to keep myself busy. And then I actually appreciated that Grambling was in the country once I figured out, that guys thought I was attractive and I thought they were attractive. And I was like, oh, I could get sidetracked easily here. So I was kind of glad to be isolated in the country so I could graduate.
So Pam, let me talk. Let me ask you. You obviously mass comm major. Why? What led to the decision to pursue a degree in mass communications?
Broadcasting. I mean, the power of the press can be powerful or it can be destructive. And for us as Black people, I was always concerned about the way we were portrayed in the media. And that probably started in high school. And initially, I wanted to be an English teacher because I was like a command of communication in the English language. And I love words and writing, what have you. But the power of the press and telling stories was, I really thought that I would do stuff like documentary stuff. And I can see how now I've, transitioned into more contextualizing things and stories that I want to tell by the way of society, particularly with politics. But I mean, I think that's what I always wanted to do. And you are, believe it or not, when you're true to yourself, you're drawn to things that you don't know why you're drawn to them, but they feel right. And broadcasting always felt right. I mean, I remember the days at the GSU TV Center with Mr. Penny and having arguments and debates and learning how to present logical arguments in your delivery and speech writing and what have you. So, I mean, that felt really natural to me. And of course, I'm competitive.
Yeah. I think I can't speak for the way it is now, but it's funny you would say that because I think just about every single person in that department, there was a certain level of friendly competition, if you will.
Right. It makes you better. It's like the Kobe effect to me.
Yeah.
I loved Kobe Bryant, not because he was a superstar and all of that. I loved Kobe Bryant because of his commitment to excellence, and he made everybody else, like, as my mama used to say, either shit or get off the pot. Did you come to play or did you come to play around? And that's what I felt like at the TV Center.
Yeah.
And it was, I can remember them telling me, because I started off that first semester at radio at KGRM.
Right.
Remember, they made us play jazz.
Yep.
We had to learn how to open up the station.
Yep.
And there were a couple of times where I thought I was on the air and the students would call me and be like, hey, why y'all ain't on the air? And I was like, I'm on the air, I'm playing jazz. They was like, no, you're not. So I had to go back and reboot it. Like, I didn't set up right.
Yeah, I remember those days.
I just play it off like I had been on the air,
Yeah.
But look, it's not about where you go to school so much, even though I love HBCUs, it's about how you apply yourself. And whether you go to Harvard or Howard, if you're not applying yourself, it doesn't matter. And the opportunities were there at Grambling. I mean,
oh my God. Yeah. As the kids say, facts.
Right.
It's because you say that it reminds me of a conversation that a lot of people have nowadays. And where, they talk about the value or, granted, I understand today, college is expensive. Not saying that it was ever cheap,
right.
But now there's that growing argument that 4-year universities aren't worth their weight because of what the results are with the students that are graduating from. Now, I push back on that,
right? Because
while I do accept the fact and I appreciate the argument that college is expensive, I'm also one who believes that there is value in that to the extent that, in many instances, the social interaction and the fact that, to me, it ultimately is what you make it. And, and it's what you say. So if you go to school and you want to major in a certain discipline like this, and you go through 4 years of school and something happens and you end up doing something else other than the discipline that you went to school to master, if you will. I am of the belief that sometimes that ultimately, I understand things change, dynamics change. There are a lot of things that happen beyond our control that we can't change. That ultimately the decision that person made to go in a different direction has nothing to do with the college or the education that that person received. That is all due to application and the desire to actually want to do it.
Right.
So, like I said, that's my personal belief in that. I understand it may vary from person to person, but the fact that you and I went to school to major in communications, to go into the world of broadcasting, and then to some degree made a career in doing it, I think kind of speaks for itself.
Right. Because listen, Ken, think about I can think of at least 5 people that we used to have to put together. Remember, Mr. Penny would make us put together a broadcast. And I don't know if you remember how those broadcasts in the TV centers would be disastrous because people didn't want to do the prep work. And what Mr. Penny had us doing. And now I realize how much of a genius he really was. And respect for him, because he made us learn all the elements. Even though most of us wanted to be on the air, he made us learn how to be a director. He made us learn how to be a producer. He made us learn how to run the prompter. He made us learn how to run the camera.
How to edit.
He made us learn how to take a shot, how to boot up the system, to understand how you were broadcasting. And I can tell you that of all the people that would be in those classes, there were only really 5 or 6 of us that were always hardcore. It would take us forever to get that little 30-minute broadcast on. But I still have that raggedy tape with the not white balance camera and the hollow echo sound. But I had it. And do you know how many people at that time? Grambling was accredited. We had an operational TV center. We had an operational radio. We had an operational newspaper. We were triple threat accredited, just like Jackson State is now. And now we're not accredited anymore. Dunbar Hall isn't even open on campus anymore. And you have these people that go into mass comm thinking, oh, I want to be on TV, but they don't recognize that you got to do the grunt work. When I first came out of Grambling State University with that raggedy tape in 1990, I got a job. Why did I get a job? Because I had that raggedy tape, because I went to the conventions, because I learned how to do the things, even though it wasn't good. It wasn't about whether it was good or not. They were looking at your potential. So when I got out of Grambling, I graduated in December of 1990. I took a job in February in Amarillo, Texas. I was a reporter, and I had to edit. I didn't have to shoot my own video, but I had to edit my own packages. And I thought, man, what a grunt. I'm out here in this job and I got to edit my own packages. Well, that made me a better storyteller, and it made me have the best thing I learned how to do in Amarillo for those 11 months was learn how to do a live shot. And that live shot is what projected me to the 6-figure anchor job down the road. Because when I first graduated, I made $15,000 and I qualified for food stamps. Okay. I was so broke. I had student loans. I had a car payment, insurance, rent. I had to tell my son again. I lived in an apartment that was 400 square feet. We have an upstairs. We have an expandable area. It's like a game room, which I have now turned into a boutique. Right. But it's 400 square feet. So I had to tell my son, this was my apartment. He was like, well, where was your kitchen? Where was your bathroom? I was like, right there. Right there. He was like, I had to explain to him, you don't start off at the top. You learn. And that's why I said Mr. Penny was a genius, because he taught us all the elements, not just being on the air and delivering and the content part of it, but to understand how we got there. So if need be, I could be flexible, which it turned out was good for me, because look, I was happy to get that $15,000 job in Amarillo, Texas, because half of the people that we graduated with in broadcasting did not have an anchor job. Now, there were people down the road that ended up, well, I can tell you, we got James, James Lynch. Remember James Lynch? He worked in TV. He still does.
He used to,
Shag,
not anymore.
Shag. What's Shag?
Richard Creech.
Richard Creech. He works in broadcasting. Marvin. There's several of us now who have worked in broadcast, but we had to learn that grunt work to get us in. Okay. So you talked about us being competitive. Yes. I'm gonna have to one up you though, because you and I graduated at the same time. Yep. You said you graduated in December and you got your job in Amarillo when? February. Well, I graduated in December. I had mine waiting for me before I graduated. That's why you number one.
That's right. That's why I'd say that the lady that we are talking to right now is arguably the second greatest mass comm major to come out of Grambling because, of course,
class 1990.
1990, yes. No, I'm just playing. Anyway, so Pam, you've in our conversations previously, you have echoed to me time and time again about how impactful and how Grambling changed your life, the trajectory of your life. So you started that by saying that before I cut you off, but talk about that and why that is for you. So going to Grambling was so impactful for you.
Right. So when I went to Grambling in 1990 in the fall, I told you that I did not have, oh my God, that's like rain and hail outside. Okay. So I did not have money. I didn't have the money
86.
to go to college. I came from a single parent household.
1990, you mean 86, right?
All right, in 1986.
Okay.
Right. I graduated in 90. But when I got there in 86, and I graduated from high school, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any scholarships. My mother didn't have any money to give me. So I was really dependent on that conditional award of the Pell Grant, right? So I was like, I know that going back to Kansas City, Kansas, and working in a low-paying service job was not going to serve me well, even though I was going to have to put out some money to go to school. So I looked at it as an investment, right? I was like, well, I'm going to take out this loan because I know that I'm going to be able in the future to pay it back. So when I got to Grambling and I did that pageant, one of the things that really changed how I felt about myself was, I was the only dark-skinned girl. And I didn't know it until somebody at the Grambling night ran the story of, we have these HBCU queens, and historically at HBCUs, their features favor more Europeans. Now, I hadn't thought about it, but I had some personal interactions with a couple of my Gramblingites who made comments about me and my skin tone in the pageant. These are people that I'm competing with. And I could have either let that make me or break me in a certain sense, but I had enough people at Grambling State University of all different kinds of persuasions and backgrounds and looks and organizations who let me know that our history and my skin color was just as great if it was cafe au lait or deep black espresso mocha, whatever color it was our color, and that we all deserved a seat at the table. And remember Mr. Eddie Jones?
I do.
And Dean Ruby Higgins.
I do.
And there was, I can't call her name. She was an AKA, very tall lady. Oh, it's going to come to me. But these were the people, Dr. Vincent's wife, who was also a Delta. These people were like our board. And they took us in, and they didn't just teach us about how to walk and be graceful. They taught us about having content. That's when I really started studying political things, which led me on to the Miss America pageant, which is the reason why I did so well, because it was more than just a pretty face or a cute swimsuit walk. I had some content because I had been trained in that way, and I was applying myself. I was back then in Grambling, I was already reading about the way politics and systemic racism affect us and the funding. Remember, Grambling was at that time, Grambling was in a consent decree, one of the first consent decrees to be awarded of how the funding for Louisiana Tech per se was, percentage wise, so much higher than the funding for Grambling.
Right.
And so once I got it was like coming home. And like I said, and once I stepped into, I guess, my blackness and how dark I was, I reveled in it. I did. I reveled in it. And I love the idea of somebody telling me that because somebody was from Opelousas and their history was operating in light skin and quote good hair, my black self, that's the competitive Detroit part of me. I was like, oh, I'm going to show you how black I can be, And so it was good, but it still made me love us in all of our ways, because then what that took me to understand was, how did we get colorism? And that made me start understanding and studying colorism way beyond the house and the field Negroes. And colorism is something that Toni Morrison writes about. I love, and we still are dealing with colorism to this very day, but at least now we understand how we got there so that it doesn't have any power over us. That's what I mean when I say it. Grambling showed me how to take my power and use it for my good instead of somebody making the power to make me bitter. It made me better. And so that's why I said Grambling, I will forever raise money for Grambling. I will forever promote Grambling. I will forever, sing, "Oh, Grambling, dear Grambling, we love thee, dear. Oh, Grambling, we're loyal to thee. Our dear old school will fight for thee forevermore. And when thy sons to battle go, the hills will ring from shore to shore. Oh, Grambling, dear Grambling, we love thee, dear. Oh, Grambling." And yes, I did sign half of my retirement, whatever money's left, because I told Ian I'm going to spend every dime I can. But whatever's left, which, it'll be nice, Grambling will get half of it.
Wow.
Yep.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You fortunate enough to get into the field of journalism. Your career starts in Amarillo.
Yes.
And you take that journey as most young journalists do, starting off in very small market America.
I'm going to tell you what I did, Ken. So when I graduated, I'm proud of you for already having your job, because when I graduated, I sent out, remember they used to make the 80-yard market book, and it was like all 400 markets.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So what I did was I targeted from markets 160 to 50. And I sent out like 150 resumes. I still have copies of everything I sent out. And from the 150 resumes I sent out, I got 3 nibbles. Mm-hmm. I got a nibble in Oregon. I got the nibble in Amarillo, and I got a nibble in St. Joseph, Missouri. Now, I went to the interview in St. Joseph. I declined the interview in Oregon because Oregon was far away, and they were paying something like $12,000, the same as St. Joe, $12,000. In St. Joe, I would have been an anchor, but I would have been a one-man band. Mm-hmm. So I would have been an anchor, shooting, reporting, running my own, a one-man band. It would have been my one-man band show for St. Joseph, Missouri, which now I think about it, it probably could have, I would have turned that in a year or two the same way, but it might have put me in Kansas City quicker, which not necessarily so much better. Because what happened after Amarillo, I stayed in Amarillo for 11 months. I knew that they weren't going to let me do anything except be a reporter in Amarillo. So I mastered the live shot. I mean, I became very good at the live shot. And then that was the time that I had ran for Miss America. The first time out, I was still a student, and I was like second runner up to Miss Kansas. We had done a lot of Miss Louisiana preliminaries, and I couldn't win. I would be like first runner up, second runner up, third, but I never win. Always win Miss Congeniality.
Right.
I got so many of those little silver platters, but I would never win. And there were some Louisiana people with the Miss Louisiana pageant, 2 people, and they pulled us aside, and they told myself, they told Tiffany Williams, Faith Hunter, and Ruby Higgins, who was our consultant. They said, look, what they said are not going to let y'all win because y'all are scaring the crap out of them. And they said they especially not going to let Pam win because not only is she Black and going to Grambling, she's not even from Louisiana. They said she should go to her home state and compete. And that's what I did. And
so
I just got back.
Happened. Wow. Okay.
So I went, and that's how I ended up running for Miss Kansas. And the first time I ran for Miss Kansas, I was second runner up. And then I went to work for a year in Amarillo. They asked me to come back, and I came back and I won.
Wow.
And that is what, but all of that came through Grambling, putting us in those pageants. And like I said, every time I did a pageant, Ken, there was some scholarship money. So by the time that I actually graduated from Grambling, my debt was only $16,000. And I had won enough. Miss America paid all that off, and I still had monies left. So to come out of school after that and to have no debt, I mean, my credit score was awesome. Then when I finally started making some money, you know, you make money, you can get more money. So it was just like, wow, it all paid off. I mean, I was under 30 years old, already making six figures in a top, at that time, Kansas City was top 30. Kansas City was top 30, you know, in a top 30 market. And I thought, wow, I can really make this happen. And during the course of my career, when I came here, I had chances to go to network. I had an agent at that time. I could have been on Dateline. I could have possibly been the morning anchor that Hoda Cogby did, because she was in New Orleans. And my man, by that time, I was married and I wanted to have a kid. And so I passed on that whole thing. And I look at a lot of people I work with, and they've gone on and made a lot of money. But here's the thing. TV news now, and I often think about that. I don't think I would have sold myself out. I know I probably would have ended up getting fired or in a lawsuit, but I was not willing to sacrifice who I was for the broadcast, because I worked for a Fox O&O in Kansas City. And I was so happy to get out of that station. I was so happy. Now, I probably could have gone on and made a lot of money and worked for Fox News and been a big anchor, but I wouldn't have been true to myself. And that part, especially at my age now, at almost 57, and realizing good, bad, and ugly, I was always authentic to me. That's more valuable to me than having a multi-million-dollar contract.
Okay. So needless to say, Pam, you had a successful career in the field of broadcasting, you know, as a broadcast journalist and as an anchor. Okay. I would be remiss not to bring up that moment that I guess nowadays they would say went viral, but in the case for you, I don't know, man. You pulled off the wig.
Yes. My natural hair.
And look, that made national headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit, I was there and I was like, I swear to you, when I first saw it, I said, hey, goddamn Pam, you know, and I knew it was authentic. It wasn't, you know, a lot of people, you know, they do it for show, they do it for clicks. Right. I get it to a certain degree. Right. Depending on the situation, mm-hmm. you know, there has to be a level of entertainment. I get that. But mm-hmm. when you put in consideration how serious this particular situation was, talk about that. What led to that?
That was, look, I knew that when I took that job, because when I took that job, I was already diagnosed. And I had been having conversations with, at that time, my news director. Really, we had been talking for about maybe 4 years, because I was looking to get back. And initially, I knew that I didn't necessarily want to be on the anchor side. I wanted to be more on the commentary side. And so when the opportunity came, I will never forget, I had just had surgery, because I got diagnosed in November of 2012. And I had surgery in December of 2012. And I was in the hospital when I got the email from Tammy, who was my news director, who became my news director. And she says, I think I got an opportunity if you're interested. And she said, it's not a lot. I just want you to do one show, the 4:00 show. And I was like, I think I can do that. And what I did was I went back and I did that for like a year and a half. And she allowed me to talk about going through cancer, the decision of going to my natural hair, because I had been processing my hair for years. And anybody that knows me, when I was on the air, I was anal retentive about my hair. The hair was part of the package, the signature flip, the signature layers. I mean, that was my part of and I went on the air for 10 years and never did I ever pull my hair back. I made sure, if I didn't even feel like whatever was going on to be in there, my hair was going to be there, because my whole mentality of being on the air was, the viewer knows nothing about, I'm here to deliver the viewer the newscast. What's going on with me is irrelevant when I'm on and that's how I was committed to it. I did public service appearances. I did the community outreach things. I made sure my content was always as efficient and thorough as I could be. I was one of those anchors. I was anchoring from the set, producing. I mean, I'm not going to have me reading some crazy stuff. I often let producers know, if you don't know how to conjugate verbs, don't write my copy. And I would correct them and give them books. Most of them appreciated it. Some of them felt offended, but nonetheless, I told them, you don't have to like me. As a matter of fact, I don't really care if you like me. But when we're on this broadcast is about all of us, but it's my face that's out there, because nobody walks up to you and goes, hey, why you say that on the news the other day? They don't say that to you, do they? But they say it to me. Right. So I'm not going to let you write me out of my career. And you have to be vigilant like that as an anchor. Or you can be, the funny thing about TV news now is that you can make money and not even have any substance. Okay.
Lord knows
that's why I knew that long time I was not going to be in that business. But I'm grateful for the experience and exposure, and I feel good about the work that I did. I got to interview a lot of incredible people and learn a lot of incredible information, and to be that representative for us, because I still get people to this day still talking about me being on the air or telling me I came to their school or this and that. And I'm like, no, I didn't, because these are grown people now telling me, I remember you came to my elementary school, and I'm like, oh, wow, that had to be like years ago. So that wasn't me, but here I am still here, and I'm grateful for it. But a lot of people don't get to live this and go on and be on the other side and still be grateful for what you did.
But I want to go back to that moment, Pam.
Oh, when I took the wig off.
I want to, what led to you making the decision to do what you did when you did it? And I mean, did you let producers know? Yes. Was anybody aware?
So
talk about that.
I had already been, when I started chemo, and 10 days later, my hair came completely out. 10 days later, it was like, and I had gone to the salon, because at that time I was doing so I had signed in February. I started anchoring the 4 p.m. show for Channel 5. And when I went on the air, I disclosed that I had cancer, and we started talking about it. And so I disclosed to the audience how I was, my hair had been this whole thing. And I remember having a conversation with God and just saying, look, whatever my hair comes back as, I'm no longer going to process it. I had already decided that. I said, I'm not going to process my hair anymore. This was around the time that people had first started talking about perms causing cancer. And so I had decided then, I said, I'm not going to process my hair again. So then I told her, I said, I am going to have a wig to wear while I figure out what to do. So I wore that wig, and I would come into the station ball. I would be in the station, and I did an interview too. The good thing about being on the air was I could promote myself on the air. So they came to the house. We did a whole story. I took the wig completely bald. To me, I looked like Michelle Obama's brother, Craig.
Yeah.
And it was, you can't be vain when you're going through something like that, because you don't look your best. You don't feel your best. Your skin is ashen and dull. Your eyes are glossy and hazy, and there's nothing you can do about it. Your teeth, you just don't even feel like having a camera shine in your face. But I told God, I was like, if you give me a vehicle, I will speak your word and make this better for somebody else. And we were able to get women who would normally not get mammograms. I have professional friends who are grown who were afraid to go get a mammogram. And me putting it out there and putting them out there like that. And I feel like we did a lot of good. And I got to work with some local organizations, which I still raise money for, Making Strides with Cancer, the American Cancer Society. So taking off the wig, really, I was nervous, but I wasn't vain. And it was actually liberating to take it off. It was freeing.
I got that sense. Yeah.
It was just freeing, because I had been wearing, I would have the wig on at the station, and I'd be sweating, and even though the wig looked like my hair, because a lot of people didn't even know that, they thought I still had my hair. And so it was liberating. And then initially, those first few months, just every day waking up, not knowing what the hair is going to do, because natural hair has its own mind. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned how to gel it and somewhat get it to cooperate, but natural hair has its own mind. So I had no idea what my hair would do from day to day. But it didn't make me feel, I just felt liberated. And I felt like I put my makeup on and just keep going. Just keep going. And it was,
I take it that after you did that, you obviously got a lot of attention.
Oh my God. I got
what was that about?
I got thousands of emails and I answered. It took me a minute because I didn't finish answering those emails. I think I might have even almost been leaving this, but I answered all of those emails. I got letters from people, from women in Australia, from women in Germany, from Canada. And I got a lot of letters from white moms who had Black children who said, thank you, who said, thank you. And I ran a whole package on it. I had done a story on it and talked about it. And we archived all of that. But these letters from these emails from these moms, they were just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have shown this to my daughter and I'm trying to get her to embrace her hair because she's trying to make her hair be like these white children that she's around. And I'm telling her to embrace her hair. I got a lot of letters like that. Then I got letters from other cancer survivors, letter from just all kinds of letters of people saying, thank you for your courage and thank you for being who you are, you know, just really grateful for it. I got no negative responses. Wow. And the funny thing about it was I've always had at least one or two people in the market who make it their business to send me stuff at whatever station I work for, including at Channel 5. And the person that used to send me stuff, the hate stuff at Channel 5, stopped sending it.
Wow.
I kid you not. Just stop sending it. Just stop sending it.
So you have a journalism career that started in 91 and I guess ended right around 2015. And then you make this transition into becoming I guess a public service, or i.e. you got on politics, Pam.
Yeah, that part. So I've lived in this community for 30 years. And although I've known what goes on politically, when I worked in television, I never spoke out about, that was part of the rules to the norms of journalism.
Yeah, right.
So I never said anything. But I have watched the systemic disenfranchisement of Black voters, of Black taxpayers, of poor people, of public education be just railroaded for 30 years in this state. And so for those last 8 years, the Democratic Party, which at that time was very diverse, people from all faiths, backgrounds, men and women, age brackets, just all different kinds of people. And they kept inviting me. And there was one lady who is, she's actually a Muslim, but she is very inclusive with all faiths in her faith. And she does a lot of community service work. And she had been, because I was posting stuff and she was like, begging me. So one day I finally decided to go to one of the meetings. And after that, I saw these women that were, had been fighting this with no help, but they had courage. And I was like, wow, I should use my platform to do that. And so that's how I started getting involved. And the first election I helped was in 2018. I helped Mike Espy, who used to be a secretary of agriculture.
Mike Espy,
in the Clinton administration. And he to this day, he still has received more votes than any Democrat in the state of Mississippi, more than Obama, more than Hillary Clinton, more than President Biden. And yet he still lost to Cindy Hyde-Smith, who is the front row of the lynching lady, who also had no skills, no qualifications. This lady is so MAGA, who used to be a Democrat. So a lot of people in Mississippi were Democrats, what you call Dixiecrats.
Yep.
And so after the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed, these people got mad and they became the Republicans that we now know today as MAGA. And these people are literal descendants of Confederates. I'm not making that up. This is literal factual information. Cindy Hyde Smith is a third generation, I want to say, or fifth generation Confederate descendant. Her people own slaves. Also, Tom Cotton. These are people who are in political power sources. And that's what this whole DEI anti-woke thing, Project 25, it's all about taking Black people and putting them, quote, back in their place. And it's the back. This is historically, after the Civil War, you had Reconstruction. Reconstruction, the backlash from Reconstruction was what? The KKK, the riots of the 20s. It wasn't just Tulsa. There were 300 towns, including Nicodemus, Kansas, that were raided by violence, by the Klan, by systemic racism, land taken away, the same way they did Native Americans. So fast forward to 1964, then you have the backlash of the Dixiecrats, Nixon, Reagan, all of that was backlash from 1964, trying to dismantle the progress that Black people made. Now you have the backlash of Obama, that great Black president. They are still pissed about Obama, and he was so excellent. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Black excellence has always surpassed white mediocrity. And that's what the whole woke thing was about. When you had George Floyd get killed in 2020 and the masses of young white people saying, hey, this is not right. You had more people demonstrate in 2020 than in 1964, and you had more white people. And that's where all of this is anti that. So you have to understand American history, and that's why they don't want you to learn certain things. Why is it that when white children start learning that their ancestors disenfranchised Black people, and that's how we get the systemic racism, the repercussions of it today, they want to go back and change that. Oh, we can't teach that. That make white people feel bad. No, it doesn't make white people feel bad. It makes white people understand that white supremacy is a myth. So they believe the big lie. That's why people like Ta-Nehisi Coates get backlash for writing books and saying things that he says, because you got to control the narrative. If you control the narrative, then you control the ballot box. Look at Trump. Trump lies. He lies, and it's accepted.
No shit.
And he diverts.
Yeah, he lies. Yeah, but so let me.
So that's how I got into politics on that, because I think about people like in this state I live in, names you've never heard. Anita Blackwell, who was one of the first Black mayors in the 70s in this state. I think about Mr. Bell, who wrote a book, the Bell Hooks books, who talks about the faces at the bottom of the well. The faces at the bottom of the well are the Black people who've been lynched and murdered that we don't even know about. And now they're making history where you can't learn about them. That's how you control the narrative and keep people disenfranchised. And that's why I say, as hard as it is, as much as I loathe apathy, and the voter apathy in this state is great, and the education is poor, I still keep going because of people like United Backwell and names like like Fannie Lou Hamer. I guarantee you don't know half of the stuff that Fannie Lou Hamer went through in this state to get equal access to the ballot box. And you still have people that, when I go in campaign, I still have people that won't vote, that look like me.
Well, that might be, look, as I indicated, and we're gonna wind it down. I'd be remiss, since we're on the subject of politics and your transition into the field. Has this, because there's a part of me, and I'm not saying this to be cynical, because I hear people oftentimes talk about politics and how it's progressively gotten worse, when there's a part of me that says, no, politics is politics. We're just basically starting to see people for who they really are, because they're more comfortable now showing you who they really are.
Right.
without having to be concerned about any sort of negative
optics,
right? Pushback or feedback or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have to worry about people being canceled, like, you know, may have been at one point. That's not, for whatever reason, that's not an issue now. So is it politics has politics changed? Is it the people? Has it gotten worse? What are your thoughts about the current state of politics?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's a part of me that says, why would anyone in their right mind want to get involved with politics?
Because the loss is too great. Listen, Trump did not win in a landslide, but that's what he's promoting. So a lot of people don't engage. You had the margin that he beat Kamala Harris by, I think it was less than 2 points. It's maybe a little over 1 point. And then when you add in the third party candidates, Trump didn't have a margin of victory. But more importantly, you had 90 million people. That's more that voted for him, more than voted for her. You had 90 million people. A lot of them look like us, did not vote.
Nope.
People think that, well, politics, I'm not involved in that. Well, politics are involved in you, whether you acknowledge it or not. And it's because too many of us have had that apathy, thinking that we have no power, that they continue to have the power to dismantle it. So whether or not you recognize it, your zip code has programmed you into an algorithm that unless you make an active change to make it different, it's going to go just the way that they want it to do. And there was remember at Grambling, they used to always have that saying about how the people without a knowledge of their history are like plants without no roots. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about context. Trust me, I did not want to do politics. You make no money. You deal with all kind of stuff.
Yep.
I put in my own money. I get ridiculed. The most problems I get are not from, I do get a lot of problems from the Republicans, but from people that look like me.
Like you. I know it.
People that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep going because I know that some ancestors' names that I don't even know, especially in this state right here. So many bodies buried, so many people that were lynched. My ex-husband's father had a poll tax receipt. He paid $3 to vote in 1950 something.
Wow.
That's against the law.
Yeah.
But it was done.
Wow.
Think about it. Slavery was legal for a long time. Okay. And when in the real context of us as Black people, we've only been citizens really since 1964. We have, I think somebody did, one of these authors did the thing. I think we won't get until we get to 21. It's like 2100 something that we have been free as many years as we were enslaved.
Wow.
So that's why I keep fighting for that, you know. And like I said, I'm like this. When you mess with me, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. You know, that's how I'm built like that. You mess with me, I'm gonna fight back. And so my way of fighting now is totally different. I'm gonna mention this last thing about politics. So I ran for state Senate, which is in the state legislature of Mississippi, for Senate District 2, which is where I live. I was involved this time in March of last year, I testified at the Thad Cochran Courthouse, federal courthouse in Jackson, Mississippi, in a lawsuit against the gerrymandered district. My district was gerrymandered 3-1, meaning for every one Democrat, there were 3 Republicans. Even with that, I had 19 precincts. 11 of those precincts were 70% white. There was not one that was 70% Black, not one. I still got 44% of the vote. So with a fair district, which is now, the ruling came down in July of last year, 3-0. My testimony is cited in the ruling 5 times because I talk about all the context. They're going to have to draw a fair map, and the map will include my neighborhood.
Wow.
And guess what? It will not include an incumbent. So the legislature has until April That's why I've been spending a lot of time in Jackson. The legislature has until April to draw this map. Now, if they go the way that Alabama did last year, because Alabama has a new congressional Black district, and we had the guy win this past November with a fair map. We're not asking you to give us anything. We're asking you to be fair. Yeah. How can you have a state where the population is 40% Black?
Yeah.
40% Black. But you writing us out of districts. So we're just asking you to be fair. Like Stacey Abrams said, we're just asking you to be fair. Right. So I'm looking forward to that. I will be running in November. So I will be campaigning once again, raising money, what have you, doing the work. And should I win this office, I will be gracious enough to know that I am there to try to get Medicaid for all in the great state of Mississippi. And if I can do that, I can tell the Lord I'm grateful. Thank you. But that is why I stay in the game, because I do this area and what you go through and the things that I have gone through personally, including having my own personal pastor endorse my opponent in my church.
Wow.
And then tell me he didn't even know what I was running for, but I'm wrong for saying something. So I just stopped hiding.
So you say this run is going to start when?
Well, we have to wait for them to the end of the legislature in April.
Okay.
So what they have to now, by law in the state of Mississippi, everything has to be in place by the end of July. So we're really just watching the courts, because if they go the way that Alabama did and the legislature doesn't submit a map that the court approves, then the court draws the map. And if the court draws the map, it's going to be blackety black. Okay. So I don't think that they want to go that route, because that's what happened in Alabama. The Republicans defied the Supreme Court and they said, okay. And the map was really fair to Black people.
Right. So Pam, what we know about your future political plans, but what else can we expect from you going forward?
Wow. I don't know, because Ken, for the first time in my life, I'm recently divorced. So I'm really on my own now. And I haven't been like this in a long time. And unlike when I was young in my 20s, I'm not worried. I am not worried. So I'm just clearing out the old to make new room for the new, whatever the unseen God has for me. And I trust that it's greater than I know. So I'm just trying to be patient and do the work and see it through. The only thing I can tell you for sure is that I'm going to keep going.
Wow. She is Pam McKelvy, GSU class 1990, mass communication major, former journalist, future politician.
I hope I can be a stateswoman. There's a difference between a politician is somebody that's in elected office and plays the politics. But a statesperson is a person that does what's right, even if it's not popular. Because like I said, the job is considered a part-time job. It doesn't even pay $30,000.
Well, you say it's a part-time job, but it's going to take a lot of your time, though, isn't it?
Right. What do I want to say on it? The qualifications of the job requirements have nothing to do with the work that needs to be done with that job.
Okay. Yeah.
Because currently people that do that job don't do it for everybody. See, if I am elected, I'm not just going to be looking out for Democrats. I'm going to be looking out for all the constituents. And the majority of people in this district would love to have access to medical care. Okay. Without worrying about how much money they have. They aren't connected in six-figure jobs. So my goal is not to be in there to make it a partisan hat for my party to take over power. That's not how I'm looking at it. So I don't see myself playing that political game of, trying to run for a higher off. No, that's not my goal.
Yeah. Pam, I can't thank you enough, lady. You are literally the first. Well, you're not the first, but you are the first profiled guest that I've done for this podcast, and I ask that you not be a stranger going forward. I'm gonna, until your other projects come up.
I'm 1901 Charles P. Baby.
Okay, well, all right, baby. I'm gonna have you come in and do some of these things. You hear me? So this was very strategic. So for those of you who are out there watching or listening, visit the 1901podcast.com to make a donation to continue to support this endeavor. We believe it is very important because we're going to use this profile or this platform to profile Grambling Knights, to tell our stories in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah.
And so go to on all of the social media platforms. Follow us, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, we are out. God bless you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Pam.